No single cocktail is as iconic, as beloved, or as discussed and fought over as the old-fashioned. Those are the first words written in this book, The Old-Fashioned, by Robert Simonson. And this cocktail, the grandfather of them all, is what we'll take a look at today. If you're here just to master how to make a modern, delicious whiskey old-fashioned, here's a timestamp for that. But if you want to learn a little bit about its formula, its ups and downs in popularity, and a few key versions, continue watching. We'll make it 4 ways, from the original cocktail that inspired the name, to its midlife crisis, followed by its modern revival, and finally, what it might be like in the future. It will be a doozy, so stick around, and if you haven't subscribed yet, be an ace and do that while the intro is playing. This time for real. It's cocktail time. The story of the old-fashioned starts with the name cocktail itself. While this term now covers almost all mixed alcoholic drinks, it was once a much more specific concoction. In the heyday of cobblers, coolers, flips, grogs, slings and toddies, a newspaper printed that expenses of the loser at the local election included 25 glasses of cocktails. One breeder wrote in to ask what that was, and on May 13, 1806, Harry Crossfell answered with the now famous definition. Cocktail, then, is a stimulating liqueur composed of spirits of any kind, sugar, water and bitters. It is vulgarly called bittered sling. He goes on with some more political commentary, which we'll happily steer clear of. So 4 ingredients, let's talk about them and make the first version. Back in those days, Hanover, gin and brandy might have been the main players. But in 1802, when Thomas Jefferson lifted the whiskey tax of 1791, whiskey's production really grew, and so did its popularity, particularly rye whiskey, which is what I'll use here. For bitters, I couldn't find the original Dr. Stoughton's Elixir Magnum from the 17th century, which David Wondrich considers the bitters that might have been used for the first cocktails. But I think a modern version of Bowker's bitters will do just fine. These were called for in the first cocktail book ever printed, by Jerry Thomas in 1862. As you can see, this will be a mix of early cocktail writings, but we're leaning on the first recipe from 1806, which also means no ice, just water. Interestingly, that same year was when Frederick Tudor, known as Boston's Ice King, sent his first ship from Massachusetts to Martinique with a cargo of ice. Ice trade would flourish in the next decades, becoming the standard for mixed drinks when Jerry Thomas printed his first book. Now grab an old-fashioned glass and let's make an 1806 cocktail. Start by adding a single sugar cube into the glass and soak it with a few dashes of bitters. Add a splash of water, then muddle the sugar cube to break it apart and make it easier for it to dissolve. Now we add whiskey, with what was then called a wine glass measurement, or nowadays 2 ounces or 60 ml of rye whiskey. As mentioned, feel free to try with other spirits. Bonus points if it's Dutch Hanover. To that I'll add a pony glass, or 1 ounce or 30 ml of water. Stir this to dissolve the sugar, but as Simonson puts it, if some sugar remains at the bottom of the glass, don't fret, it didn't bother your ancestors. They actually had a small spoon known as the old-fashioned spoon to scoop up the sugar at the end, as dessert, which you can place alongside the glass when served. No garnish mentioned in the newspaper, so that's it. Let's give it a try and see how it developed over the next 200 years. Firstly, you'll notice it's warm, spirit-forward, spicy and herbaceous. At the same time, it's easy to understand the appeal that would make people fall in love with it back then. In the next decades, this simple cocktail went through a revolution of its own, and not just with ice added. It seems bartenders have always had a habit of curiosity and experimentation, finding new ways to add their flair to an established drink. Fruit and liqueurs such as maraschino, absinthe or chartreuse started to be used as a way to create what some called the improved whiskey cocktail. Some people liked it, others didn't, especially if it wasn't properly labeled and they didn't know what they would get. Sound familiar? So the name the old-fashioned whiskey cocktail, first time found in print in 1880, became popular with patrons that liked their drink made with the back-to-basics mindset. A little sugar, a little bitters, a lump of ice, a piece of twisted lemon peel, and a good deal of whiskey. Sounds a lot like what was brought back in the latest cocktail renaissance, which we'll cover later. But in between, there were hard times for the old-fashioned. The prohibition didn't help, and once bartenders started to get back to the trade, much has changed. New trends, spirits and styles of cocktails became fashionable as the 20th century rolled on. Somewhere in there, you really were old-fashioned if you ordered an old-fashioned, and not in a good way. And with new cocktail books adding fruits like orange slices and cherries, adding soda water and garnishing it with more fruit, the cocktail became a shadow of its former glory. However, to cover the wide range of cocktails known as the old-fashioned, let's make a mid-century version, something non-draper might enjoy. Get a double old-fashioned glass for this, as was needed for extra ingredients. Add a sugar cube, a few dashes of Angostura bitters. throw in a slice of orange, a candied cherry, and add a splash of soda water. Give everything a good muddle. Add extra soda water if needed, trying to dissolve the sugar and releasing the flavor of the fruits. Now add ice, pour in 2 ounces or 60 ml of your whiskey of choice. I'm using Rittenhouse Rye. Another splash of soda is optional, but I'll just give it a quick stir, trying to keep the fruits at the bottom. If you use brandy and topped it up with a choice of flavored soda water, like 7-Up, Sprite, or Squirt, you'll be able to call it a Wisconsin Old Fashioned. We just garnish it with an orange slice and a candied cherry, and call it a day. It's fruity, still boozy, and actually less sweet than I expected. Don't add 7-Up and it's drinkable. Sorry, Wisconsin. Luckily, the Old Fashioned was one of the classic cocktails that had a real resurgence in the last 20 years or so. The name cocktail has long been hijacked, so the spirit sugar bitters formula is now better known as the Old Fashioned family of cocktails. Rum Old Fashioned, Oaxacan Old Fashioned, Black Walnut Old Fashioned are just a few cocktails that became modern classics. But let's make a modern whiskey Old Fashioned, the way I think respects the origins of the grandfather of cocktails, while providing the best drinking experience possible for the patron. I'll use bourbon, Angostura, and cacao bitters, gum syrup, and saline solution. Start with ice. Have a clear ice block ready, so it tempers while you make the cocktail. I'll make it in a mixing glass, which I'll chill with ice first, so don't get extra dilution from melting ice later, as we are chilling the cocktail. Now into a chilled mixing glass, add a syrup in place of sugar, so the cocktail ends up with the same sweetness from the first sip to the last. 2 bar spoons of a 2-to-1 gum syrup will be enough. That's around 5 ml, or shy quarter of an ounce. If you only have a classic sugar 2-to-1 syrup, that works as well. For bitters, I'm going with 2 dashes of Angostura aromatic bitters from this precise dasher bottle, and 2 dashes of another flavor of bitters. Always looking for something to highlight notes of the spirit I'm using. Here that's cacao bitters, but orange often works great as well. Speaking of spirit, add 2 ounces or 60 ml of whiskey. I'm using Maker's Mark bourbon at 45% ABV or 90 proof. That small bit of extra strength helps it keep the main role in the finished cocktail. And to highlight all of the flavors, I always like to add 2 drops of 20% saline solution. It doesn't make it salty, but just makes the flavors pop a bit more. Now add plenty of ice and stir well to mix, chill and dilute the cocktail. Strain it into a low tumbler glass over a clear ice cube, and finish it off with an orange peel garnish. After you express the essential oils over the glass, I like something less flashy, so a small coin works great in my opinion. And that's the Old Fashioned, as I like to make it. Let's give it a try before we make the final version. It's very balanced, straightforward, matching the tasting notes of the whiskey itself, with hints of vanilla, chocolate, banana. Playing with flavors using bitters can be fun and easy, as it allows us to discover new dimensions of taste. Are there easier ways to make the Old Fashioned? Of course. One way is to get Liber & Co.'s Old Fashioned cocktail syrup. It combines their classic gum syrup with just the right amount of aromatic bitters and cold pressed orange oil to make a one-step solution for a great, fast and easy Old Fashioned every time. Another way is to batch it and have it ready in your freezer at all times for whenever you're in the mood for an Old Fashioned. I'll link the episode where we cover all of that. But in sake of progress, we need to look at how to take the Old Fashioned to the next phase of its evolution. Now this might be back to the future kind of a thing, since this is how the Old Fashioned got its name in the first place. But you never know, if molecular mixology gets super popular, this might be what the Old Fashioned evolves into in the next few decades. To make it, I'll use Hering's Guard, a 12-day-old nut whiskey from Eto, gum syrup with tonka bean and gentian tinctures, saline solution, and 2 special garnishes, Orange Tuile and an Angostura Gummy Bear. I don't want to make this episode 20 minutes long, so if you'll find this part interesting, drop a bear emoji in the comments and I'll make an episode where I cover in detail how to make all of these delicious ingredients. Into a chilled mixing glass, like before, add 2 ounces or 60 ml of our non-whiskey, followed by a quarter of an ounce or 7.5 ml of gum syrup. This already has tonka bean and gentian tinctures added, like we covered in the tinctured syrups episode. Gentian will provide a nice bitterness that will pair nicely with our Angostura Gummy Bear. Just 2 more drops of saline solution, and we can add ice, stir to chill and dilute, and stir over a clear ice block into a wonderful crystal glass. For garnish, carefully place a piece of Orange Tuile on top, followed by a Gummy Bear made with the Angostura bitters. Perfection. Nutty, spirit forward with a bit of cherry and bit of spice. It evolves further when enjoyed alongside the Angostura Gummy and the Orange Tuile. Leave a bite for the end. With that, we've made it to the bottom of the glass. We've now covered the history and evolution of a lot of classic cocktails. You can check them out here, but I'd love to hear suggestions on which one I should cover next. Until next time. Cheers, friends of cocktails.